Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beyond the Home Study podcast. This is a podcast for parents of adoptive children, children in foster care. We're here just to help you navigate the world beyond paperwork and placement. So, thank you so much for being here. I've got Laura Rose, my co host, with me, and a new friend, Lainie Hartley. Hi, Lainie.
Hey, you guys, we're excited to have Lainey with us today. She is a new friend. Lainey is an author, a developmental service worker, a former foster youth. She's a foster and adoptive mom herself. And she's also the creator of the Bridge program, which we're going to hear about later today. So, we're excited to have Lainey with us. And yeah, why don't you what's been going on, Lainey? What's up? How's your weather? Where are you in the world?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. And I think you girls are just amazing. This is going to be so fun. I'm really excited. I am in Ontario. It is freezing cold here. I would show you out my window, but it's just a blizzarding snowstorm out there right now. We have been covered in ice and I am ready for spring. I am ready for new growth and sunshine. I feel like I have not seen the sunshine in months. So that's where I live. And I live out in the boonies, cows and horses and no people. So it's really nice,
Well,
actually.
I'm not
No
jealous of the
traffic.
boonies, but I am jealous of the snow.
Yeah, we have
What?
snow too.
Yes, I love snow, and we have, like, a
Oh,
dusting, that's it.
oh man. Where are you guys from? I don't even know.
I'm in Northeast Ohio, so I get the Lake Erie lake effect snow from this side over here. Yep, and so it's been snowing all night.
You've been having snow too, Abby?
Yeah, it's been snowing since, like, probably, I don't know, early this morning, like 5, 6 o'clock this morning, and it has not stopped.
Yeah, same.
But
Yes.
anyways, we're not here to talk about the snow and how we wish it was spring and all the things, even though we're all in the same boat. So let's jump into some questions, Lainey, so that we can get to know you, know your story a little bit more, and we can really introduce you to our listeners too. So, I know you have shared a lot on Instagram and you have written a book. And so, if people want to get the nitty gritty details of your whole story, they can go to those places and find them. But why don't you just
Absolutely.
give us kind of like an overview of, okay, you grew up in foster care, you were placed in kinship care at a very young age. Give us like a few highlights from along the road of your journey.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. I wrote my memoir called Simply Neglect. Like you said, you can get all the details in the book. But to highlight a few things, I was born to my mother who struggled immensely with her mental health and with generational trauma that literally does go back generations. She had 9 kids, like I said, very overwhelmed. And my first time in foster care was when she delivered her eighth child, and we were sent into foster care. Um, the second time, she had taken me out for a walk, and, she didn't normally leave the house. I was 3.5 years old, and she walked me into a building and just told me not to follow her out. That was absolutely terrifying, very traumatic for me as a child. I went into care for 1 year at that time, a really great foster home, I loved it. After 1 year, I went for a visit with my mom, and I never returned back to the foster home. That was very, very sad. It was right around Christmas time. She said, I had all these presents under the tree for a little girl and, no little girl to give them to. So at around 4.5, 5 years old, I got sent back home to my mom to live with her. Things worsened in terms of neglect and abuse and poverty and the struggle. And then when I was almost 9 years old, she gave me away in a motel parking lot to her brother. So that's when I entered kinship care. I stayed there until I was 15 years old. I had lived this, super barbaric life with my mom and then placed into this really strict, religious, rigid kinship care home. And at 15 years old, I ended up running away to live life on my own. I had learned a lot about responsibility living in their home. And at 19, I joined a recovery program just through the church, like a Celebrate Recovery program that was, kind of life changing for me. It was a really great program. And yeah, just entered into a lot of bad relationships and went on this journey of who I am, like, what is my identity? Who am I? Um, and that all led up to meeting my husband, my best friend, the man of my dreams. I love that part of my story. And here we are 19 years later together with 3 kids, and, that's kind of the whirlwind answer, but yeah, that's
Helpful for listeners, but also I know there's no way we can even possibly, like, get the magnitude of everything, like,
yes,
in that 30-second answer, like, oh my gosh, like, there's so much in there. So,
yes.
let me back up to make sure I'm kinda getting my facts straight first, just timeline-wise. You you went into foster care multiple times
Mhm.
starting from 3? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a 3-year
Okay.
age difference between me and my younger sister when she was born. Yeah.
Okay. And then it kinda went in and out foster care back home, kinship care, and then you stayed in the kinship care until you were 15?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just
From
making sure I'm
9
getting all that.
yeah,
Okay.
from about 9 until 15.
Okay. Okay. Whew, dang.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so when you I know some of those you were really young, but just whatever you can remember, what did you know about going back home to your mom?
I
Like,
think
what was told? Like, what did they tell you, or what did you understand?
think that's a hard question to answer because life with my mom was my normal, even though it was very chaotic and it was full of neglect and abuse and poverty, like I mentioned. And then you get put into this home when you're like 3.5 to 4.5. There's not a lot that I remember about being in that home other than the feeling of it. Going to the doctors, being like having my birthday celebrated. That was a really big thing. I hadn't had that. And so I'm not sure it's more about like the memories, but about the feeling of it. And that loyalty that I had already felt as a child of I really want to be with my family, but I really love being in this home where I'm so well taken care of and I'm nurtured and I have like these warm frilly pajamas that I wear and I get to go to bed in clean sheets and these people pay attention to me. And so it's hard to answer that question, but I think when you've only known a life of chaos and then you enter into a life of peace, it can feel very uncomfortable. And so I had been going to visits back home with my mom during that year. Well, with my family, right? My siblings who I miss so much. There were so many of them. And I felt this tug already at a small age. And yeah, I refused to get into the car, into the driver's car. And so he didn't pick me up. And then the CAS was like, well, just let her stay home. Just let her unite. And so all these years later, I felt so terrible, that like it was my fault that I had caused that separation between me and my foster parent, even though that's what was safe and that's what was good. And it's probably a home that I should have stayed in, you know? Um, but to kind of spoil things a little bit, like I had reached out and after 30 years, I had ordered my foster care file and I had found her. It felt like an impossible search, but um she said that she would have adopted me in a heartbeat, and that's something that I just hold so close, but also there was, like, this immense amount of guilt of, like, "That's what I needed, that's what I should have had, but I refused to go back to you because I wanted to be with my family," and all these little things that, like, kids, these little toddlers, we shouldn't have that responsibility or that guilt from that, but I do really feel like that was a home I should have stayed in.
Wow. That's really incredible. And even just thinking, Laura, I'm thinking about your story that you shared on, well, the last week's podcast about, the children that were in your care for just 3, 4 months, like thinking about them in 30 years, like getting back in touch with you. That is so wild.
Yeah, like, will they remember that?
Wild.
Um,
They will.
yeah, and I can't man, I mean, that's your hope, like, as a foster parent, like, that's my hope is that you've made an impact somewhere so that at some
Mhm.
point in time, that child knows, "Hey, it can be different. You should one day know that there is something that is more secure, that is safer," just so that they know, like, this exists.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
go
So,
kinda
Lainey,
off
what?
trail a little bit, like, the what we write about children and care, like, it matters so much. Like, if those kids are trying to find you one day and they read these beautiful things that you wrote about them that speak to their character, not just things that they did, not terrible things that their mom did, not being known by our worst mistakes, but to actually be able to read the words that somebody who cared about me said about me, like, there's so much power in that. The pictures that you take, those books that you don't wanna make of, like, all the photos and the events and the tickets and everything, where we went and what we did. Those life books, I think that they're called. They're a lot of work to make and to keep on top of, especially when you're dealing with so much chaos in your home and all the needs and everything, but they mean the world to a child who comes back looking for answers, and they find you and they wanna know about their childhood and what did I look like and what did I love to do, so save those things. It literally means the world, to kids who come back looking for you.
That's so
That's
sweet. Yeah.
encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. I wanted to ask Lainey, what prompted you, 30 years later to even go and look at your foster care file?
That's such a good question. I had become a mom, and I really thought, when I was pregnant, I'm gonna be nothing like my mom. I still had a lot of, like, bitterness and anger and embarrassment and shame and all of those things that I had from my childhood, and I just thought, I'm gonna be the best mom ever because I may not know what to do, but I know everything that I'm not going to do, And I couldn't wait to be a mom. I really felt like that was my life's calling. And then I gave birth to the most beautiful children, and I'm looking down at these babies, and I would already give my life for them. And I'm thinking, like, how could my mother treat me that way? How could I go so unnoticed? How in the world, looking at my children, think like I would never allow my child to live the life that I did? And it brought up so much in me when I had kids that I just thought, like, I have to know who I am. I have to know the answers of my past. I have to, like, unravel all of these hidden secrets and all of these things that I hold so much shame over. I really want to just unbury all of those things. I want to know my mom's life story. I think that I was too um embarrassed, if I'm being truthful, like, I was too embarrassed to even know about what her life was like, and it wasn't until I was almost 30 that I even asked about her life, and I had a lot of guilt about that, how did you wait this long to ask your mom, like, what she had been through? And when I had learned about what my mom had been through, it completely changed my view of her. It changed how I thought about her. I had this empathy toward her that I had never had before. And, you mentioned that I'm a developmental service worker. I went to college because I wanted to understand what it was like to live in her mind. She already had so many setbacks through the generational trauma and through what she lived through as a child and through mental illness and all of that stuff. But how do you do that with 9 children with multiple, disabilities, mental illnesses, and being homeless and living in an area where there wasn't a lot of help? Um, I don't even know if I answered your question. I totally went off there, but when I when I had kids is really when I was like, "I need to know who I am. I wanna know." And then you read about those things, the different ages, and then your children hit those milestones, and it's like a shot in the heart every single time. You think, like, when I look at my kids at that age, I think of myself at that age, and it's just mind-blowing to me all the time, but
Man, that's crazy. You're like, "Oh, when I was crawling or when I was learning how to do this, like, as my kid's doing this, it looked very different."
yeah, or being like my child was 3.5 years old, and I'm imagining them, like, clinging to my leg and having somebody peel them off of me, what that would do to them, you know?
Huh.
Like, all of those ages, it was really just it was mind-blowing, but also, as a mom, I think my favorite part about all of it is just the redemption of all of it, that
Mhm.
at that age when they're 3.5 years old, I'm like, "You will never know what that's like. You will never, ever know what that's like because I put in the work to make sure that that never, ever was gonna happen to you," you know? So
So let me ask you, so you mentioned that, you as you learned more about your story, you had more empathy towards your mom, and,
mhm.
typically, like, with typical childhoods, kids view their parents as kind of like God or like a savior. Like they have this like very like fantastical view of their parents. And then there's
Mhm.
an age when we start to say, wait a minute, you're not so perfect, and it's usually in like the teen years. Do you, did you ever have that in the beginning? This like view of your mom, like she's amazing, and then it turned, or was, yeah, how did, what was that like?
Yeah. So, yes and no. When I was a child, that was really all I had known. And so yeah, I loved my mom and I loved my siblings. That's the thing, right? There was so many siblings and they were getting taken out of care and they were going into foster care and then he would leave and who knows when he was coming back and my other brother would leave and who knows when he was coming back and my little sister, she left to go into foster care and I didn't know when she was going to come back. It was just such a terrifying feeling of when are they leaving? Well, I have to get home because I might see them. They might be there, you know? Um and so I think that there's a big difference between, um, like for a neglected child when it comes to the difference between like safety and love. Like they're
Mhm.
not the same thing. And so a child can be neglected and they can still love their parent. And I think that that's really misunderstood. But yes, as I got into my teen years, there was definitely so much anger
So
and I
before that
just
though, you did see your mom, there was a
yes.
period where she was, like, amazing, and then it
Yeah.
switched to anger?
I think when I moved out of my kinship home, I felt like I was allowed to have the feelings because it was my mom's brother who, and he had the same childhood that she did. Like really, when you think about it, I shouldn't have been placed there at all because in many ways it was worse than what I was experiencing with my mom. And so when I moved out, when I ran away at 15 years old, I had so much, anger, but I had connection with my siblings, and so they were telling me, all of the things that they had endured, when they were living with mom. When my one sister, she's 10 years older than me, and so she was telling me, everything in her childhood, things that she did, things she had to do in order to survive, and in order she basically gave up her childhood in order to be a parent to me. And, so there was, again, like, a lot of, like, bitterness and a lot of anger toward my mom, and it didn't mean that I didn't love her. I loved her so much. I was still going to visit her. I was still going to care for her because nobody else was going to. And, um, my sister, like I said, who's 10 years older than me, she had my mom live with her for 13 years, like, became her caregiver. And so we've all been helping. It's all just been, you feel how you feel, but you still love her. And you're angry, but you still love her. And you're bitter and you still care for her. And it's like, you know, there's still that connection that doesn't ever really break. And I think as foster parents, that's something that's really difficult for us to understand when we see a child, who's malnourished or who's being neglected and their clothes are torn and their shoes are ripped and they smell like urine and they've got a head full of lice and we're sending them home to a place where we consider like abuse or consider like, you know, I really don't want that child to go back there. How could you love your mom? How could you still love your family, when they treat you that way? And that's what I'm trying to say. Like there's a difference between love and safety. Like love is biology. You know?
Like, you can love someone, but that
Yes.
doesn't mean that you feel safe and secure with them.
That's right. Like I loved my mom and I wasn't safe to stay with her, and I think that we need to hold both of those truths that a child can love their parent and at the same time I'm going to advocate for that child not to be in her care. Um we can sit at a table and I can humanize you and I can empathize with you and I can, want you to get better and I can, advocate for you that you get the help and services you need and I can also say I'm going to protect this child from ever being in your care. So,
You're right, yeah.
um there's both of those truths there and it gets really tricky, but we can hold both of those things at the same time. Um and yeah, neglect and love, two very different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this from kind of the the foster care parent perspective. So, you like even just thinking of that very first family that you went to go and stay with, Lainey, when you were 3.5. Like, what would you say to foster parents today who have someone in their home? They have this child in their home who expresses a lot of love towards their birth mom or their birth parents or siblings. And like, I'm trying to like play that out. Like, what does that look like? And what encouragement do you have for the foster parents in just how to navigate that with anyone from like a 3.5-year-old, or a teenager? I'm sure that they're very different responses, but
Mhm.
it's a tricky thing.
It is, but I think that a child will feel even will feel even more safe with you when you love their mother, when you love their
Yeah.
parent, because they don't have to feel like they're in this battle of loyalty, you know? Like, am I allowed to, I've been here for a while, am I allowed to call you mom? Well, how do I call you mom without my mom finding out? There's this deep, like, troubling loyalty that we feel. But also, that's something that I feel like my foster mom did very well. I would come through her door with squished cockroaches underneath my feet and a head full of lice, not just lice, but like crawling lice. And she would welcome me into the house, and she would have a bubble bath ready, and she would sit by the side of the tub, and she would just talk with me. And she wouldn't be like, "Oh, you're filthy, you're disgusting again. Don't even wear those into my house. Strip at the door. Take those off right here." You know? It was, I was welcomed in, into like a warm bath with bubbles, and we would talk to each other, and we would hang out, and my clothes just went right into the washing machine, and I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed of what I was coming in with, right? Because I knew that I was gonna be loved. Um and yeah, I just think like that nurturing piece is just so important, because children, I don't think people realize this, that you might think that you're speaking quietly, or that your thoughts are inside of your head, but your child is looking to you, your body language, what you're saying, what you're not saying. We want to know, we are reading you from top to bottom. How do you feel about my mom? How do you feel about me? How do you feel about my siblings? When you express your frustration, I hear those things. I feel those things. I can feel it in the way that you're walking around the house. I can, I can sense it in your tone and the level of patience you have with me. Like, um, I can feel all of it in my body. Even as an adult, like, I am so intuitive when it comes to, like, what's around me and how a person is feeling. Like, I can pick up on the emotion before the person can pick up on the emotion. It's like, "Hey, I see that you're really upset. You're showing me this, this, and this." And they're like, "What? Yeah, actually, like, how did you know that?" I'm, like, super aware and hypersensitive, and I've had to do that. That's been, like, a safety protection kinda thing, that, do I need to be that chameleon? Like, "Oh, you're upset, I need to be upset too?" Always judging of how am I gonna be safe in this situation?
Yeah, talking about like the kids reading your body language and knowing how you're feeling about their mom. This podcast really has challenged me to be even more open. We've always been open with my daughter about her adoption, but I think doing this, week after week has caused me to just naturally be a lot more open. And I've seen this in her. The more that I have started to talk about, we call her first mom. The more that
Mhm.
we talk about her first mom, and the more that I show her pictures, the more I'm seeing that she's starting to talk about it, and she's drawing pictures of her and saying, "Can you send
Yeah.
this to her?" And asking questions that I don't think she felt comfortable even at 4 when we've been open, just because it wasn't a natural part of everyday conversation. So it's really crazy, like how much a difference it makes.
Yeah, well, it's very clear that she feels safe with you. She would not be doing that if you weren't creating that environment for her, and letting it be known that I'm acknowledging your mom. I am acknowledging the life that you had before you came here. Just that alone. We have the Skylight app, and it has, like, photos that it just runs through, and our son's mom is on there, and I want him every day
It's a
to
good
be
idea.
able to see her, and he'll say, "Oh, that's Mummy T," or he says her full name, but, um, that's my mom, and that's right. That is your mom. In your bedroom, there's a picture of you and your mom. That's something that I always, even from birth right up till whenever, he's almost 7, but, um, it's a conversation that I always, always want, to be an open thing. Even at Christmas time when he was, like, 4 years old, he hadn't seen his mom since he was 3 months old. Um, but he creates these situations. He puts, an ornament on the tree, and he's like, "My mommy made this for me. My mom gave this to me," and I'm like, "No, she didn't. I did that. I did," you know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, "Oh, that's so nice. Isn't that so nice?" And, um, so he talks about her even though he doesn't remember her. He sees himself as a baby with her. Um, but yeah, it's not a taboo
So
topic. It's
how do you
something anytime you can talk about.
So how do you think, so kind of transitioning into that motherhood, and you've talked about this a little bit, but how do you think having been in foster care has changed you as both a biological mother and a foster and adoptive mom?
That's a really great question, and it's something that I feel like is so important to talk about. I think that being a foster and adoptive mom with the history that I have has been both helpful and it's also been hurtful. Like, I've had kids who have come through my home, this one little girl in particular, and it really felt like I was caring for a younger version of myself. She came to my house with no clothes. It was the middle of winter, and she didn't have a jacket or boots or anything like that and had a full head of lice, and, she had been walking for months in her own waste, on a plastic sheet that had been put across her floor. She was stained from her skin had been stained from walking in that environment, unsupervised in a locked room. So I have these kids who come through, and she had brown eyes and brown hair, and I'm bathing her and I'm seeing the lice floating, and I'm scrubbing her skin, and I felt like I was taking care of a younger version of myself. And so I really had to remove myself, after I got her all clean, and I just went behind the bathroom door and I just cried, cried, cried because it hurts. It hurts me so much, like all of these memories. I've worked through so much of my trauma. I'm doing a lot of EMDR work, but all of those things that we don't even realize live inside of us. They're exposed all the time, like when we have kids come into our home. And I think that doing our own inner work before we become a foster parent or when we're triggered by things for us to be in therapy because I feel like all of us adults, we're all just little children walking around, all of the wounds that we have experienced in childhood, they all affect us even in our adulthood. Um, and so yeah, my past, my history, the trauma that I have was really, really exposed while these kids were coming into my home. But it also made me so empathetic and so compassionate and so in tune with their feelings and watching for all of the signs of, okay, they're uncomfortable, um, they need a break, or they need affection, or they need a snack, or they need, you know what I mean? I was really in tune with them, but also it just brought up so much in me.
So, transitioning a little bit now to, what life looks like for you now as an adult who has had this past. Like you've talked a little bit about, what that looks like as a mom and how you respond and how you react and everything. But what do you think a lot of people don't understand about how this trauma resurfaces as an adult? What do you see in your life with that?
Yeah, like I said, um, I think for anybody, whether they've had the history that I've had or not, these things come up all the time for us, and how important it is for us to be in therapy and be in tune with ourselves, and um, how we're treating other people, how we're treating the kids in our home, is a reflection of the work that we've done in our lives, to heal or to not heal. Um, but yeah, as a mom today, it looks like just constantly being in check with myself and constantly just, checking in and doing things that help me to self-regulate myself, whether that's writing, for me, I love, love, love to write, getting outside, getting some fresh air, Yeah, reading, listening to other people's stories. I think that's really important too. Um, having community, I think is everything. Having somebody you can talk to, bounce ideas off of, other foster moms who are going through things. Um, yeah, and people who have done the work. Like I want to be hanging out with people as a mom,
Mm.
with people um who have done the work, who are ahead of me, because I don't ever want to step back. I want to always keep walking forward.
That's such an
Um,
interesting way to put that. I have never
yeah.
thought about it that way, but, like, yeah, like, who you're surrounding yourself with in your
Yes.
community matters, like, not just any community, but people that have put in the work, like you said. That's just an interesting point.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm almost triggered by people who have stories like mine,
Oh,
because I'm
yeah.
just afraid. I'm like, I never want to go back there. I never want to be there again. I have worked so hard to be where I am right now. Um, that I really want to help you, but I'm not going to help you from a place of wounds. I'm going to help you from a place of like, this is what I
Yeah.
know now. This is the truth that I live in right now. This is what I have come to learn. Um, because I never like you can be a victim or you can be a victor. And I never want to enter the victim mentality again. And I don't want to surround myself with people who are still in that victim mentality, who aren't willing to do the work. Like if you're willing to do the work, it's like, hey, here's the path forward that that I know about, you know? But if it's poor me, I hate my life, but I don't want to do anything about it, I can't sit there. I can't it triggers too much. You have to want it really badly and be willing to do the work.
It's really helpful to hear, the way that you're talking about, how you're processing and what the steps are you're taking. And I'm just kind of curious, what's your husband's like role in all of this? Did you marry someone who is like uber boring and like, not like he's boring, but I mean like I always say this about my own husband because he just like his parents are still married and I'm like, "Pff, what's that?" Anyway, yeah, like what's your husband's role in all of this?
I don't want him to walk in here, but he is very boring. Um, and by boring, I mean absolutely amazing. Like he's so stable. He's not somebody who flies off the handle. He's not somebody who reacts quickly. He's somebody who thinks everything through. And I have flown off the deep end many times in our marriage. And he is just that safe person who is just stable and um I'm the big personality, right? I'm like immediately, let's go here, let's book a plane, let's go on vacation, let's go away for the weekend, let's whatever, everything is always just up in the air. And yeah, he is not like that. He likes to stay home. He loves his job. He loves his work. He loves his family and it's work and family and work and family. Um, so yeah, he's boring in the
We're
sense of he's
kindred
completely
spirits.
stable. Yes.
I am a similar personality where I'm like, let's just do all the things." And he's like,
Yes.
"Let's maybe take a step back and think about it."
Yeah. Oh my gosh, but he loves me so well and our story is so beautiful and he's an amazing dad and he's an amazing husband and coming from so much instability in my life, he brings so much peace and comfort, stability, all the things that I really needed as a child and as an adult. He just makes me feel safe. Yeah.
So good. I love it. I love seeing, like, opposites attracting. I watched a movie this weekend, actually, that was based on a book that I won't go into, but it was very much that of, like, wanderlust, she wants to go and she wants to do all the things, and he's like, can you please not eat in my car?" It's like, "Come on."
Oh my
It
goodness.
was very cute.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyways, okay, so I think that I feel like we've covered like lots of aspects of your story and we've talked about like birth parent and like how to love them well, foster parents, like we've covered a lot of different things, but I want to give you the floor to be able to talk a little bit about the bridge program. I want to learn about it and I want you to be able to share a little bit about it with everyone.
Okay, good. So let me just start by saying that I think that there is a lot of hatred and a lot of judgment toward birth parents, and I know what it was like for me to navigate that relationship with my mom. Um, Especially, like she was homeless for 7 years and she actually ended up living with me and I became her caretaker and I learned so much through that experience. But I am in these foster and adoptive groups and I'm reading through, these posts and questions that people are asking and I'm just like, man, like birth parents are vilified, absolutely vilified. And while the majority of kids in care, they're not actually being abused. It's a lot of women and men, parents who are under-resourced and they don't have the resources to heal from their childhood trauma and their mental health and, living in poverty, things that we can fix. Um, but anyway, I saw so much vilifying of that in there, and I just thought, like, I'm gonna create something. Like, how can we create a bridge between the foster and adoptive parents and the birth parents? How do we unify this relationship and just humanize the birth parent? Because when we think about it, it's the child who is at the center of what we're doing. Like, both of our goals are the same. We are child-centered. The goal is for the child to be safe. That is the goal. Both sides, should want that. Um, but yeah, it's a training and education program um for foster and adoptive moms. It's something that I want, to spread far and wide to every agency. It's something that I don't feel like is in training. Like, how do we navigate relationships with birth parents? I think that, the child comes into our care and it's completely cut off. It's like you're not allowed to know where I live, where they go to school, what programs they're involved in. There's so much that the birth parent doesn't know. And as a foster and adoptive mom, a lot of times we only hear the negative things that, a birth mom has done. And I just think like we can't only be known for the worst mistakes that we've made. That's a human being with like a whole childhood. Like, what is their story? What have they been through? What are their experiences? How do they need to be loved? How, instead of taking their child, how can we like repair this? Um, anyway, yeah, it's focused on trauma and neglect, but the whole thing is based off of my own lived experience. And so there's a lot of like brain science in it and a lot of neural developmental stuff, but also it's based off of like what I felt as a child to my birth parent and how I felt in foster and adoptive care. I mean, it was kinship care, it was everything adopted minus the paperwork. But yeah, I think
So is this something that how can our listeners, if they're interested in this program, where would they go to find this?
okay, so it's still being launched. I have um the whole thing completed, but I want to make like videos to go with it. I really want to like personalize it where it feels like I'm telling a story, but it's educational through all the modules that I've created. So it's not out in the world yet. It is on my computer and it is ready to be sent out very soon. But yeah, right now I think that people it would be great if they could um, just listen to stories of former foster children. I think that there's so like within the whole system, there's people from top to bottom who are working there that don't have lived experience. And if we want to know how to better a system, we need to talk to the children who have lived in it, you know? Um, so yeah, I think that there needs to be more people working within the foster care world that have lived experience. And I think that if you're in a foster parent role, in an adoptive parent role, it is important to listen to adoptees. It's important to listen to former foster youth because we can help you understand your children. That's my whole goal. I want you to understand the children in your home. Um, and to just learn how to love us so that we can have a good relationship with you, you know?
I love even the point you shared earlier of community and making sure that, like, you as the foster and adoptive mom or parent are in community with the people around you who are also foster and adoptive parents so that you have some sort of sounding board, so like, okay, I hear this and then I can go and share it. And then we can talk about like, what does that experience look like in our own home? And, on and on. And hopefully we can all find people like you, Lainey, who have been, in the foster system who are adults now, who have done the work and are working to heal and can continue to share with us. And I thank you so much for sharing with me. I mean, yeah, I haven't had foster children in my home, but I know a lot of people who have. There's a lot of people around me who have, and it's so valuable for me to hear your story, to learn and to gain empathy and all the things that you shared. And so, yeah, I just hope that more and more people can take these stories and then continue to share them.
Thank you. And I'll add just one last thing to that again, that when you are a foster and adopt a parent and you're looking for community, make sure that you're looking for community like in healed places. Because if you're going to sites that are just trashing the whole time, sites with people who are just so angry and they're bitter and there's a lot of just so much negativity rather than like how can we train ourselves? Who can we listen to? Who can we be in community with who are on this journey, but who are looking for hope? Like, always, always look for hope. Whether you're the foster child, that's something that has carried me through my entire childhood. I was always dreaming, I was always hoping. We can't lose sight of hope. So, whatever community, you know, you need in your life, just make sure that is something positive and just life giving. Always, always, lead toward the light.
That's such a good reminder for our listeners. I know I have stumbled on some sites where there's a lot of complaining. So,
Mhm.
um, definitely don't want to do that. Lainey, so as we close, I know you've got a book that we want our listeners to check out. So it's Simply Neglect: Redemption Beyond Poverty and Foster Care, and it is on Amazon and Audible. And then where else can our listeners find you?
Yeah,
Instagram, email, where would they go?
yes, I do. I share my whole heart on Instagram mostly. So it's at author Lainie Hartley. Facebook is just Lainie Hartley. My website is LainieHartley.com. It is all kind of just Lainie Hartley. And there's so many things I want to do, this coming year as well. So lots coming from me. I hope that there's going to be some more speaking opportunities. I have some travel plans for speaking coming up soon. Um, but yeah, please stay in touch. I love, love, love people. I love community. I love talking with people and sharing my experience and listening to your experience. Definitely reach out.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lainey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lainey, for being here with us. And we will link all of that at the bottom of the show notes. And if you're listening and not looking at the show notes, just note it's Lainey, Lainie. I always like to point that out. Um, anyway, so thank you so much, Lainey, for being here today. And you guys, we will see you next week.